In this video, I'm going to show you how to use audio to drive parameters in After Effects. So you might want to use the audio to create pulsing size of the clip, to rotate the clip, to change colors, turn lights on and off, and so on. So a short example of this is actually using a plugin variant of this. The main benefit of that is that I can separate out the frequencies, so I'm actually driving three different objects depending on whether it's low, mid or high frequencies. You can replicate this in After Effects. It only does it on one channel, but if you were to take the soundtrack and use the EQ in Premiere or Audition or even in Audacity and take out the bass or the middle or the treble, then you would have separate tracks and you could get different pulses to drive different elements. So I'll just show you a bit of this briefly to indicate the principle. Okay, so we'll launch After Effects, close this down, and what I'm going to be doing is bringing in a royalty-free clip of music. Just go new project, okay, so go up here, go import, file, I think it's in downloads, there we go, yeah. Just a very generic piece of music, and the first thing we need to do is to drop this into the project area like this. Let's play this back. Okay, so we've got some music there. Now on its own that's not really going to help us do anything, so if I right click on this, I've got this option here, Keyframe Assistant, convert audio to keyframes. Do that, takes a little moment, and then you'll notice another track has appeared here. Okay, now it won't appear in the final clip. I mean, you can turn that off if you like. But if I twirl this down, you'll see under Effects here, it's come up with left channel, right channel, and both channels. Now, normally I use both channels to drive stuff, but you could, if you've got very different kind of beats in different channels, then you could use that functionality and link to one or the other. So what's actually in these channels? Well, if we just scroll this down here, and you'll see there's a solid line here, and in order to actually see what's going on there, I need to zoom in, and every single frame has got a keyframe associated with it. So you can see this left channel, right channel, and then both channels what we're going to be using here. Now, what's really helpful is because these are values at each of these. So if I move along here like this, what should happen? Yes, when the music actually starts, here it is. And what's handy to do is to get a sense of the upper and lower values on these. So it's worth going through a bit. I think when I looked at this earlier, we sort of go from about 31, 32 is the highest, and then there's one bit where it goes right down, but about 19 to 31, 32 is the kind of range we're talking about. Okay, so these are actual values that we can take from this. So to demonstrate this, to keep it simple, I'm going to use a static image and then just apply stuff on top. So let me just go File, Import, but obviously you can do this with video as well. So what have we got here? Let's go down here and look for an image file. So if I come down here, MPEG, PG, Brewdog, here we go, that'll do. So I'm going to drop this in here, and now we've got an image. First thing I want to do is probably scale this up so it actually fits the frame. So come here, drop this down, scale it up and then that will fit there like that. Okay, so now we've got our image in here. So at the moment, if I was to play that, we get the music playing and just have a static image. But how can we animate this image in some way? And I'm just going to do it with basic parameters, and then maybe drop a light in to show you more advanced usage of this. Well, play it back. Music, static image. No great surprise there. So just change this to fit, that's fine. So let me start with a property. We might want to change the position. So normally, if you're going to add keyframes, so I could keyframe moving this left, right and center, but maybe if I just wanted the thing to kind of move about to jiggle a bit. There is very fortuitously an expression. What we're going to be doing here is essentially providing expressions that work in conjunction with the keyframes that we're getting from the audio, or indeed expressions that act independent of anything. They just create certain functionalities. So I'm going to do this with the position. I'm going to show you this without linking to the audio, first of all, to show you what expressions are. So hold down the Option key, rather than just click the stopwatch, I hold down the Option key, press this, and what you get here is a space in which you can add an expression. And this will auto populate if you link it to the audio keyframes, but in this case I'm actually going to type in an expression. This is one of the easiest expressions, quite easy to remember because it uses the term wiggle, and then you do how much and how often are the two parameters. I always get it muddled around, but if you type in different values you'll see the difference. So wiggle 12 and 5. Now if I come off here and then play this back, what we'll see, in fact I've zoomed in too much, it's ridiculous, right? Now you can see that track is now wiggling about. Given the amount it is wiggling, I'd probably scale it up more because I'm starting to get the black borders in around there. But to show you, so this will definitively show us which one's altering which, how much there, 125. So it's moving a lot more frequently, but still at 5. So let's take this down to 12 again, and let's do this to 50. Now that should mean it wiggles a hell of a lot more. There we go. Really quite mad. Okay. Brewdogs are absolutely going ballistic there. Right. I can turn expressions off, so static again there if I just want to test what's going on. So let's leave that unselected, and let's go back to the main impulse here, which is to drive something according to the keyframes we get from the music. So same principle as I did before. What I'll need to do is to hold these down here so I can see that slider that relates to both channels, and what I'm going to do is actually drive the scale of this based on the values provided by the audio. So first of all, hold down here, click scale for this. Now rather than type in a value here, what I do is take this, usually referred to as a pick whip, I take it and I link it to the slider here for both channels. Okay. Now if I was to play this back now, what you should notice is so the scale is actually changing depending on the value of the audio. Now because this is an expression, the first thing I'll notice here is, well, that's great, but it's just going to be this dinky little thumbnail size. But it's generating a value, and I can alter that value. I know it's roughly between, what did I say, 19 and 32. And if I wanted to change the scale, I'd probably want it to go from, it was already 117, wasn't it? So if we say 20, so probably 6 times. If I multiplied this by 6, this is just maths in my head, I think I'll be about right. So 6 times 19 will be 120, so it will already be big enough in the frame, but if it goes to a keyframe value of 30, that would be 6 times 30, so that will be 180. So now what I'm hoping is, if I've done my maths right, this should fill the frame, and if anything be slightly larger. Let's have a look. Still not enough. So maybe there's some values smaller than 19 in there, so we could increase this to 8. So that should definitely get it, hopefully, unless it's going right. Okay, so just using that as a crude mechanism, it's maybe increasing and decreasing the scale too much. But because it is an expression, I could think around this and think, well, rather than just multiplying it out by 8, why don't I ensure that it's going to be large enough and then do something with it. So why don't I, if I put a bracket there, don't want the other side of the bracket there, or in fact I don't even need the bracket, do I? Because what I could do is just add 100 to it. So it will go between, it can't be any less than 0, so at least be 100%. In fact, I could add, if I was already at 117, I might want to add. So I could just go plus 115. And now the variability, still not enough, is it? So let's try 130. Nearly there. So I want the lowest level to still fill the frame, so maybe 150. Let's try that. Okay, now we're there, because it starts off at 0. So to avoid that, yeah, all right, let's go to 180. Hopefully that will settle this now. Okay, so you get the point. It's taking values directly from the values generated by the audio, and then what I'm doing is, this is a fairly simple example, but by using the brackets and maybe dividing things or multiplying them or adding values to it, what you can do is get it within the range that's appropriate for that particular channel. So another instance we might use is if I were to make this a 3D layer. Stick a light in here and make it 3D layer first of all. Let me find. This is when you got so many of these things twirled up. And so 3D layer is this fella, Brewdog's picture there. Okay, so now that's a 3D layer. Now what I can do is get a light. So go up to here, layer, new, light. Okay, and I want a spotlight. And immediately there you can see there is a spotlight. If you've looked at the previous tutorial about adding lights, you'll notice that we are now in a kind of pseudo 3D space, so the light actually originates from here and it's shining onto the plane of the image there like that. And it's sometimes helpful to go to these views, because if you want to move a light forward closer to the image or in other kind of orientations, then it's sometimes necessary to have different views in order to do that. We'll go back to the front view because we're not doing lights today, we're just doing driving parameters. So I've got my light here. That's probably too much. I mean, you could see how I could have a little light flashing on each of these little fellas. What I want to do with the light, if I can find it, there it is up the top there. Let's light controls. First of all, the cone angle is too great, so we want to pull it in, and probably want to move the position the light up. That's the point of interest I want to change. The position of the light is different from the point of interest. The point of interest is what it's looking at, so I want to move that up. There we go. So we got dog. I should really give it a proper name, shouldn't I? But I'm not going to. Right. Okay. So we got a light there on the dog, and we could drive the intensity of this light. Same principle. So I can drive it off the same piece of music. There's no reason why I can't bring in additional tracks of music and create audio keyframes from them and then mute them, so I could have multiple pieces of music driving parameters at different rates. At the moment there's a direct connection because you can hear the music and you can see the thing pulsing with it, but there's nothing to stop me bringing in a completely different style music that uses a kind of different dynamics in terms of its quiet and loud moments, and that would create a very different feel. But I'm just going to use the one at the moment. So we've got the light on there like that, and same principle as before. What I'm going to do, just for the purposes of seeing this, there's my audio amplitude, and there's the both channels track that I want to link to, and light options. We're going to option, hold down this again, and we're going to pick whip this characteristic and drop it in. Have I got enough space there? Yes, I have there. Slider. Okay. Now again, we know we were generating values between obviously there's the thing to bear in mind is that the more complex you get, this is not doing it in real time, but I might decide that I want my maximum value to be at 100% illumination. So this would be an instance where I'd use a times 3, because I don't think. There we go now. So now I should get more. Yeah, if I can scrub through and get that effect. And there you go, and then I could do different lights. I was experimenting earlier because it's not something I've actually tried before, but you can, to some extent, you can keyframe and both drive the color values as well, but it will require some additional tweaking in order to get that out. So that's how you use audio to drive a particular function, and it draws on the values generated by the loudness of the track, and if need be you can amend this. Sometimes you'll need to do brackets, because you might need to do several operations. You might need to add 100 to the value and then multiply it or divide it or any other things. I'll provide a link in the Moodle to a guide to writing expressions. Some of these are quite long pieces of code because they have if-else statements, and you can do really quite interesting things. But the wiggle one is a standalone expression that doesn't use any driving, which quite often is the case with expressions. Another one that's used fairly often is the, let's just turn this off for the minute. In fact, let's delete this expression like that. Let me just set the, in fact, why don't I delete the light? It's going to make it easier, isn't it? Right. Okay, so we're now back. We just should be pulsing. There we go, pulsing away like this. Another thing I can do, and now clearly this is for demonstration purposes rather than intimating that this is really something that deserves a wider audience, but another expression that you can use as a standalone is the time expression, and it just adds to the value of the previous frame. This is used to obvious affecting things like rotation. So I could set the rotation, and what I'm doing with the rotation is just increasing this value over time, and it keeps rotating and rotating and rotating. Alternatively, what I could do is Control Z to undo that. If I hold down the Option key here and click Y rotation and just do time and then times a particular value, so we could try 100, what's going to happen? Well, this will just keep rotating and rotating, so I don't need to set keyframes, and I can alter that value to have it rotate at a faster or at a slower rate. I think, now I'm curious, I think, can I just put in minus numbers there, and will it go the other way? No, 1200, do 100, let's try that. I think it will. Yeah. What's interesting to note, and you'd have to work around this, is that the image does actually flip. So when we do a rotation coming around now, I think you'll find that yes, Brewdogs is now round the other way. Alright, there's much more I could talk about expressions and linking to audio and functionality, but this is just to give you the basic entry point for you to then experiment with typing in different values. I would strongly advise just having a look over the guide to expressions. There are some that you can download and use, or some you can just drop in and use and play around with. But it gives you a lot of extra functionality, and very often it saves a whole lot of bother working by putting in individual keyframes.